Hey friends, it's me, your pal Kelly Sumnikas, and welcome to episode number 52 of It'll Be Fine. Oh, it's hot. And also, how the heck is July over? There's only a couple days left in July. This is insane. But I am so glad you were here today. I mean, I'm glad any day that you pop in. It's lovely to see you. But on today's show is my dear, dear friend, Rashmi Sanjay. Rashmi also has her own YouTube show. It's called In Conversation with Rashmi. I insist you check that out. And here's the Coles Notes on how we met. So I write for a magazine called Future Female Magazine. And Rashmi wrote in and said, I've got a story I'd like to share with your readers. And I got assigned her story to cover. And we were friends at Hello. So that's how we met. Here's the thing though. A few years back, she had to have some surgery done on the spine. There's a tumor that was found. She's told, you're going to be a quadriplegic. You're never going to walk again. How do you know it's going to be fine? Your whole life has to change. But something inside of her went, no, I'm going to walk again. I will figure out how to walk again. And she did, and she does, and she is. It's astounding how lucky she has been, but also the power of positive thinking. It does a lot. And today she's here to talk about family and food, the importance of recipes and traditions, and how life has been different since she came to Canada from India with her husband, and what raising kids is like during these times of COVID. And I'm so glad she's here today. You're in for a good time. And on today's show, we are offering some love, offering some attention to the Gord, Downie, and Chanie Wenjack Fund. They're helping us non-Indigenous Canadians, build bridges with Indigenous peoples of this country, and I'm so grateful to them. So if you can help them out, I would appreciate it, as would they. Guys, it's episode 52. It's gonna be fine, and August is fast approaching.
It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
That by the time we finish filming, I'm ordering takeout, depending on what we spoke of.
I'm sure. I was telling my husband too. I said, oh my God, we're talking food and this is going to make me hungry and homesick both.
Yeah, because the time that we're filming right now, like supper time isn't too far away. So like my brain's already like, I'm that kind of person. I'll be making breakfast and planning dinner. Like I'm like, how's this going to work today? Do you do that? Or do you just think in the moment of meal?
Oh no, like I have to plan the next meal, especially with these kids around. My son's already asking, like he'll ask me the night before, what are we having for breakfast? What's for dinner?
Oh,
I'm like, oh my God, there's like a whole day, 24 hours. Let me be. So yeah, food's the common topic, I think, everywhere.
Absolutely. I mean, especially, in these days of, being home, maybe a little bit more than usual, we're kind of trying to, buy in one go. I'm someone who enjoys to kind of shop as I go. I will grab something at the store and then think, ooh, what could I make with this? And I can't really do that right now. I've got to be a little bit more list oriented,
Oh yeah, for sure. And COVID has taught us so many ways of cooking and so many different things. So it's been experimental mode for a long time now.
Yeah, totally. What did you have for breakfast today?
Oh, today, you know what? Actually, authentic South Indian breakfast is what I had.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Which would be what?
Which would be called a dosa.
Yeah.
So you must have tried it being in Toronto.
Yep, I have.
Yeah, so again, it's 2 days of prepping for that and soaking the rice and grinding it with, I have a small portable stone grinder, so
Ooh.
the taste is always different when it's ground with a stone rather than a mixie. So so that was our breakfast today.
Oh, that sounds lovely.
I
Oh,
know.
that
You
what
should
a
come over.
I would love to. I will
Now that
get
we are on phase 3 at least for Waterloo, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah, Toronto, as of the moment we're filming this, Toronto is still on phase 2. So I've been doing a little bit more. I haven't been traveling too far out of the city, but I will be taking you up on that breakfast offer.
Oh,
Uh,
totally,
as
totally. Just let me know.
soon as I
We'll have
can,
you over.
as soon as I can find someone to drive me, because I know how to drive. I just choose not to,
I know.
for the
And it's
betterment
quite
of
a
my
distance
community.
too to drive all the way from Toronto, right? So yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, no, because when we've met up, you've always come here. So I should go to your neighborhood.
absolutely. Oh
I
yeah,
really
spend the
should.
day here. It'll be
Yeah.
lovely.
Do your kids enjoy a more traditional breakfast, or they kind of down with like the cereal and the grilled cheese stuff,
You know
or
what? Initially, when the kids were born,
Mhm.
it took a long time for them to get used to the spice levels and the taste and
Oh.
everything else, just because when they started going to school, like initially we introduced certain foods and they were fine with it. They ate, both my daughter and son both loved eating
Mhm.
whatever we made at home. But once they started school, they got more conscious about, the smells, and
Yeah.
they were like, Mommy, don't pack this, don't pack that. So it ended up being sandwiches,
Right.
bland, wraps and rolls. But we made sure at least one meal we always have a traditional Indian meal every
Mm.
night for supper. So that kind of helped. But yeah, their spice levels are far lower than normally normal spice levels that we have.
Yeah.
But over time, I find my daughter, like in the last 3-4 years, her taste buds, and it's from one of our trips to India way back in
Mm.
2015, that changed a lot with the taste buds. So, which is fabulous.
Yeah.
She's trying new dishes, and my son is always skeptical. But again, thanks to COVID, we have been cooking so much Indian food with no restaurants, no options. So
Yeah.
he's developed some taste, and he likes the kind of food we make. And yeah, so it's interesting to see how things have transitioned, and they ask for it now, and
Awesome.
I'm like, yes, yes, finally.
Yeah, that's something that I've definitely either read chefs speak about or friends that I went to school with, coming from a different culture to mine with maybe a potent smell to the food or a different look to it or a different name to it. I think as a child, you want to, blend in with your buds and you want to be all eating the same slice of pizza and that kind of stuff. And then down the line, you realize what magic was there that, you didn't see as a kid because peer pressure, stupidness, and that stuff.
I know, and
But
it's
yeah,
now over the years, like today, my daughter's friends talk about butter chicken, and they're
yeah,
exposed more to different cultural foods now with different restaurants in town that have expanded. Toronto, yeah, is a hub for, you know, diversity and food and culture, but Waterloo is still a little slow in that way. So, but
yeah.
a couple of years we've started having more diverse restaurants here. So people are more aware of the different kinds of foods and they love it.
Mhm.
And that has also helped, I think, to some extent, because she's like, oh, my friend loves this one. They love the curries. They love the spice. Like, okay.
Like,
Yeah. My
yeah.
mom's a fabulous cook,
Mm,
fabulous cook.
that's
So,
awesome.
when your mom's a good cook, you take it for granted. You don't want to
Yeah.
learn. So that was my story. But I always grew up with my grandmom making stuff, and
Oh.
spent all the summer holidays at
Mhm.
with my grandmother, and growing up, and extended
Awesome.
families and aunts, and my mom cooking and everyone being a part of the kitchen. So I've seen
Yeah.
that over the years. And
Yeah. The kitchen truly is the heart of the home. It's that
it is,
saying we all kind of toss around. The party always ends up in the kitchen. My kitchen is like the size of my laptop. It's very small, but everyone always ends up in the kitchen.
Yeah,
I mean, they won't this year. No one's coming over this year for a party,
yeah.
but as a youngster for myself, like I do have memories of going to my dad's parents, my grandpa Carl and grandma Elsa, and Sunday night suppers was music and drink and
Yeah.
food. And it sounds like there was that similarity between us growing up of family just congregating and teaching and sharing.
Oh, for sure. And lucky for me, like I had two different cultures I grew up in. One
Okay.
was the Catholic one, and then the Hindu culture. And
Okay.
again, India is so diverse, and we have 29 different states, and every state has different methods of cooking and
Right.
spice levels and how they make things. So, because my mom came from the Mangalorean, where they use a lot of coconut and things like that
Okay.
to cook. And my dad's side of the family was more, the spice levels are like twice higher. And my mom picked up that as well. And so I watched both varieties, and every step seems to be, there's a particular method to be done
Mhm.
from frying to adding the spices to,
Right.
yeah. So if you skip a step, then, the taste changes. So I've seen that. I've always watched, but never
Yeah.
questioned it. Not that
Yeah.
I tried doing it myself, but that memory has kind of remained in my head. I'm like, I know what goes in, I know how it's done, but never really tried till
Yeah.
I moved here.
Yeah, it's funny how we'll go to our parents or grandparents or maybe an aunt or an uncle, and you want the recipe, and they're like, "Well, I just do what I do. I don't know."
I know.
You
And
sense
it's
it.
so funny because my mom, I would call her and say, okay, how did you do that? Oh, just take a handful of this, just add a couple of drops of that and, pick the spice, just add a spoon. I'm like,
Yeah.
but you need to give me exact measurements. She's like, I never used measurements. I just did, just go by the taste. I'm like, how do you taste it without being cooked?
It's so wild how you'll there's a couple of dishes that I can kind of do based on feel, like, I think this is about right. I think this is about right. Um, but it's interesting how when you connect when you're cooking and you just get in that rhythm and everything just tastes right and it brings you back home. And is there one dish that you have here that just mentally takes you back to childhood, like every time?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
like again, my mom's amazing chicken curry,
Mm.
she visited last year and
Oh.
I made sure I got all the recipes from her, saw how she made them. Yeah, I said this is it. This is my chance to learn the exact method and how it's
Uh,
done. So I
yeah.
got lucky there. So we spent a lot of time in the kitchen and I learned some authentic foods that she made and brought back a lot of childhood memories. So I have a
Oh,
couple of
nice.
them. But yeah, I think it's the Mangalorean, it's called pho.
Mhm.
It's made with coconut and jaggery and things like that,
Mm.
which otherwise, even at the restaurants, you don't really get them here.
Yeah.
So I learned how to make that, and this another. It's similar to dosa, but it's again a
Okay.
different variety. It's just made with rice. It's
Yep.
really thin, and yeah, it's called ponpale in Konkani.
Ooh,
So yeah, I
sounds
I just
good.
love those dishes, and
Yeah,
I made sure I learned them all this time.
that's a good thing.
Mhm. And I also stealed all the recipes. I'm like, okay, tell me the secret that you really don't share with anybody else.
Get her in a room, make a cup of tea, like you're writing it down.
Exactly.
Do you find your kids are wanting to be in the kitchen when you and your husband are preparing the meal? Are
Oh
they
yeah,
wanting to
yeah.
learn?
Both of them have developed that interest very
That's
early on.
awesome.
We started involving them in, cutting and chopping. So
Hmm.
they always loved doing that. And every time
Right.
we would start, hey, guys, do you want to help out? They'll come right away. And now my daughter loves trying different dishes. She'll go on YouTube, check out something, and
Awesome.
she made chicken, what was it called? Chicken cornflakes, fried chicken
Cool.
cornflakes. Yeah, so
Okay.
amazing.
Nice.
It was really good. So she's always adventurous and watching her, it's competition, right, between the
Yeah.
two. So she's quite something, but both seem pretty keen on cooking and watching the
Cool.
spices that we put in. She's picked up pretty well. She'll marinate a chicken all by herself.
Oh, and how old is she?
She's 12.
Amazing.
I know. I'm like, yes.
But my niece is a chef in Montreal, and just knowing that Charlotte is in the kitchens of restaurants in Montreal and plating beautiful food, it's great to see my, the youngins in the family, like,
Yeah.
create and make things,
Yeah, because
is great.
growing up again, right? It was the women who took over the kitchen and the
Yep.
grandmom and aunts and mothers. But young kids, we just played and we were not a part of that cooking
Right.
or any of that, right? So we watched them, yeah, but they always took over. And again, the spices are different from what I grew up in, what we actually get here today.
Yeah.
It's so different. I keep talking about, even the foods. We never had supermarkets or any of that back when I grew
Right.
up, right? So it
Yeah.
was a vendor would come in a cart in front of the house, fresh vegetables, fresh everything. So
Awesome.
fruits, yeah.
Yeah.
So when they saw that, there are very few left who still do that, but yeah, the kids were quite
Cool.
amazed when they saw how it was sold back there.
Oh, I can only imagine. Now, how was it for you coming to Canada and just seeing how food operated and how, like, I remember you saying a story about seeing your first snowfall and how that really kind of
God.
threw you. But food wise, were you just stunned at the options or lack of options, or did you
Um,
feel
in India, we had the growing up, at least as far as I remember, it was the
Mhm.
first um, supermarket, so to be called, or food market that was there. And it was called Nilgiris, and that was one of the very first ones in the city that I grew up, which is Bangalore. And it had a similar concept where they had cakes and everything, but there was one section that sold international foods and strawberries and cherries and stuff, which nowhere else you could get them. So
Wow.
I had seen that, but when I came here, the size of the stores is what blew me up, because we did start having mall concept come probably in the late 90s, like 1999,
Okay.
2000. That's when we started having malls in Bangalore, but we never
Mhm.
grew up with malls or big superstores. Never. It was never my upbringing. So
Yeah.
when I came here and saw huge Loblaws, the fresh clothes and aisles and aisles, I was amazed. And everything looked so fresh. Everything looked so perfect in size, and everything was
Mhm.
one particular way. But yeah, you could make out the difference. You go to Sobeys, it's a different standard there. You go to
Right.
other grocery stores, it's a different level. But yeah, I was pretty taken aback, and I started filling my cart. I'm like, oh my god, this looks good. That looks good. So yeah, but I still find, in terms of choices for vegetables, it's
Mhm.
pretty limited here, unless you go to an Indian grocery store or somewhere else. Because
Right.
other than potatoes, cabbage, lettuce,
Mhm.
I don't find as many variety of vegetables like I had growing up. Even
Ah,
in terms of greens, we have a
really?
lot of greens growing up. That's what I ate. Meat
Okay.
was only an option on the weekends. Weekdays, it was a lot of vegetables, a lot of
Hmm.
greens. Yeah, so that I find
Interesting.
is not as much here versus
Yeah,
what we grow. I think it's, again, tropical country, different foods. So,
for sure. Yeah, it reminds me of a story my father's told me a few times of when he came to Canada for the first time. Now, this was back in the 1940s, and he was coming from Latvia. Um, my father had never had a banana, is how this story goes. He'd never seen a banana, never had one. And they were presented when they got to their, where they were, the home they were staying in when they got here. And they just went to town on these bananas that were green, and they didn't know any better. And my dad was like, I got so sick. I did not eat bananas for years. I
No.
didn't know what these things were.
And that's something I was amazed too, seeing the bananas here, because everything is so perfect. Like growing up, bananas were, picked from the tree and it different sizes and they were ripe. I've never seen green bananas ripen in your house. It's always the ripe bananas that you bought from the market
Right.
and those that had spots on them. So I couldn't understand till, my husband explained how they're kept on aisles and shelves and it's gassed and this and that. I'm like, oh my goodness, okay. But yeah, just looking at green bananas in stores where you pick up and then, they turn yellow and then they have the spot. That was different for me, for sure.
I think we're sort of, especially when you've got stuff like Instagram and everything looks so good and so perfect, you don't want to go for that thing with that little scruff on it or that edge on it, which is, I wish that was a part of our culture that would just go away, because it's still good food.
Exactly. And because from where I come, there's poverty, there's, people are struggling to have food, and even if they get a meal a day, it's a blessing for them. So my parents always said, take as much as you can eat. Don't just take and fill your plate because, it has to look full. Never waste food. So I hope my kids can get that, eventually. But yeah, I always tell them, take as much as you can eat. Don't just fill your plate because you want to fill it up. Because there are a lot of people, who don't have that meal even twice a day or once a day. So, but yeah, again, talking about foods, shape and size, it's what was on the cart, what looked fresh is what we grabbed.
Yeah.
But yeah, here it's very different. And it took me a year or two to register that in my head. I'm like, why are people wasting food? Why is it thrown away? Especially tomatoes and all, right? Like,
oh my gosh,
they
it's
get
so
a little
true.
dent, it's gone. I'm like, oh no.
Yeah, or people who chuck something, if it's one day past the expiry date,
Yes.
you can still have it. You don't need to throw it away.
No, there's a lot of food that gets wasted. It boggles my mind for sure. And I hope, my kids have learned something. But yeah, traditional cooking has been a part through COVID. I keep saying COVID has been a blessing in one way because it's helped us bond, helped us cook, learn new dishes that I've never had the time to try. And again, I keep calling my mom, what do I do here? What do I do there? So thank goodness for technology. She can even watch me, put stuff in. She's like, okay, this method is not okay. Add that in. So yeah, it's interesting how times have changed.
How much, if any, did food help in your recovery? Did you find there was a certain dish that just gave you comfort to just make it through another day, or was there something you just found just?
I did, and you know what? I know turmeric plays a big role in, being an antiseptic and helping your body recover quickly. And growing up, we didn't even think of turmeric as a medicinal spice or any of that, right? It was just a part of the ingredient. And we knew that it had health benefits. And even when you cut your finger, the first thing my mom would do is take a spoon of turmeric and put it right on the cut, and she'll say, hold it.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's antiseptic. So forget the tablet, forget the Band-Aid, forget everything. Just put that in, hold it, and your wound is healed. So
no way.
Yeah, so that's how I knew that was a part of healing, but never did I focus it on my food while I ate stuff. So healing after surgery, I paid more attention to that. What goes in, what I eat, and what spices add could help in my recovery, especially in terms of iron and B12 and things like that. And again, it's all a part of what I had seen
Mhm.
growing up, because when we had cold and cough, my mom would always make a bowl of chicken soup, and it was, fresh
Yeah.
boiled chicken. The broth would be taken out, and she would give us. And it's many years later, I always knew she spoke about hot foods and cold foods,
Mhm.
and I didn't
Yeah.
understand it till much later how it really affects us. But I
Mhm.
know I have issues with sinus, and with sinus you can be eating cold foods, for example cucumbers and peppers and things like that, but chicken
Oh.
is considered, it heats your body up.
Mhm.
So the more chicken I eat, the more I can tolerate, not getting sinus or not getting stuff like that, because your body's in that heat mode. But
Right.
my daughter's body, her body is cold body. So there's hot and cold. We learned
Yeah.
growing up. Yeah. So it's kind of just been a
Interesting.
part of our upbringing. So
Mhm.
we know where to balance what. So
Yeah.
if I eat cucumbers, I know I'm down with sinus the next day. So, or even yogurt. So, because that cools your body. So,
Yeah.
yeah. So things like that have played a big role in my healing.
Mhm.
Just so I know these are the foods I avoid because I can't cough, I can't,
Right.
pressure and things like that. Yeah, so
Mhm.
that was a learning that was kind of inborn with just
Yeah.
learning and growing without really paying attention to why it was done. I Over the years I learned that, but
Mhm.
it came naturally to me.
There's something maybe in the cookbook that you hadn't tried before that you go
Um,
into?
you know what? It's the basic dal
Okay.
recipe, which again I tried it, but the method I made it in was a little different from what traditionally my mom made that.
Mhm.
And somehow every time she made it, it was fabulous. And I knew I was missing something, but over time, I don't know, my kids and my husband now say I make the best dal ever.
They're smart.
Because yeah, I'm like, yeah, it's taken a lot of tries, but yeah, that's something you
Oh.
think it's easy to do, but you have to have the right water proportion, right, ingredients, the
Yeah.
frying and everything. So I've kind of mastered that through COVID, I think. And even rasam, which is again um, a South Indian delicacy. It
Mhm.
usually helps with digestion and stuff because
Okay.
it's got fennel and all kinds of
Mhm.
spices to it.
Yeah.
So that again, each state has a different way of making rasam. So this
Mhm.
is the one that my mom makes. It's got jaggery, it's got all kinds. So it's a balance of
Mm.
sweet, sour, and salt, which is pretty
Nice.
much the common ingredient of cooking Indian food as well. So yeah, so I learned that,
Mhm.
specialized that, and my daughter and son, they love it. They just drink a bowl of it. Talking about, the recipe, we also, again, my husband loves cooking too. He used to be
Awesome.
the main cook. So, and
Ah, okay.
I helped with dishes, but over
Yeah.
time I took over and, I've
Yay.
enjoyed cooking ever since I've had my surgery. So he thinks
Yeah.
something has been fused right there that I got back to cooking. But biryani is one other thing that, no matter what we do, would
Yeah.
never come right. Even my husband's tried it, never. And
Huh.
south of India, there's a place called Andhra Pradesh, and Andhra biryani is to die for. There are
Mm.
different kinds. There's Mughalai biryani, there's, North Indians do it differently, but Andhra biryani has its, like, the spices are so different and it's greenish in color, the biryani. So
Okay.
finally, between my husband and I, we learned that when my mom was here visiting, and we finally mastered that through COVID.
Nice.
Yeah, so we made a big part of that and just lavishly ate it. But yeah, biryani was something that we've always wanted to try, never got it right in spite of, so many tries. Because I don't know, the water, you got to balance it right with the spices, and the
Mhm.
rice, you got to put it at the exact time while
Mhm.
the chicken's cooked. So yeah, it's got a lot of steps.
Yeah.
So that was something we finally got to
Mm.
master.
That is awesome.
I know, like, yes.
Are there any North American is there a way that maybe North Americans present Indian food that you've seen in a restaurant that you're like, oh no, this is not this is not legit?
Yeah.
Do you have any pet peeves?
Oh my goodness. Yeah, like a lot of dishes. Like the one rasam I say, right?
Mhm.
It's pretty much the soup that they serve in Indian buffets. I
Okay.
think it's called Montagami soup or something like that. I'm
Mhm.
not sure of it, but we went to this one Indian restaurant and it was a part of the buffet and they had it as a soup, but it was basically rasam. It's cooked with lentils and you know it's a lot of water and
Yeah.
it is soupy, so that's what it is. And even the butter chicken. Um,
I can
it's
imagine.
when you make it from the scratch, it's way different, and the color is way
Mhm.
different, and the taste. Yeah, so we usually don't go out to Indian restaurants to eat. I don't buy store-bought ready masala tea
Yeah.
pouches because I hate it from the bottom of my heart. It tastes awful. So I actually use the spices in my shelf, like cinnamon, cardamom, everything raw, and I pound
Mhm.
it in a stone pound that I have and make fresh tea every single day with ginger and everything used fresh. It tastes 10 times better
Yeah.
than regular tea, and I don't use tea bags. I use fresh tea leaves. So,
Yeah.
and it makes a huge difference no matter what.
It does. I'm really wanting to come to your house for dinner.
You
What time
have
is it
to.
now? Can I get there now?
You have to make a trip. Just let me know. You'll have a spread here.
It'll